Hello and welcome everyone to today's webinar from Qualisys. My name is Niels Betzler. I'm Product Manager Life Sciences at Qualisys, and we're located in the sports lab at our headquarters in Gothenburg, Sweden. The focus of today's session will be Calqulus, Cloud Biomechanics. We'll present you a full workflow, showing you from A to Z how to collect data and how to process it with Calqulus. And then we'll take a look under the hood to show you what is happening behind the scenes when you're running a cloud pipeline to process your data. At the end, we'll also show you how easily you can try it yourself so that you can just download it and see yourself how it works. But before I start with that, let's introduce the team that will be here with me. Besides myself, I'm joined by my colleague Raimund Jenfors, who is a web developer at Qualisys, who's been with us for many years and who was actually one of the first persons almost 10 years ago to create web reports at Qualisys. So I'm really happy he's with us today in this session. He will show you the technical details of running Calqulus. And then my colleague Vincent Fourneau also joined us in the background, answering questions on the chat. So if you have any questions, you simply press Q&A at the bottom and then type in your question. You can ask with your name or anonymously, and then that question will be answered either in the chat or after the session live by Raimund and myself. But before we move on, I would like to sort of make sure everyone knows where we are in the Qualisys cloud ecosystem if we talk about Calqulus. So zooming out a bit, our cloud ecosystem consists of web reports and other parts. The web reports were what we created first. And if we take a look at an example report, then I can just briefly describe some of the features. Some of you may know this, but some of you may have used them in the past and might not know the latest features that we've added, because one thing I want to highlight is that there's continuous development and improvement work going on with the web reports. First of all, the web reports is a single place to see data, to see the skeleton, and to see video data if you have cameras, all in one view. You can review the data fast, slow. You can maximize views if you want, for example, to discuss results with a colleague or with your participant. And it's also possible to interact with the charts. So you can, right now, we're showing the mean, but you can also show the trial mean. So one mean line per trial, or you can look at consistency charts, which show you every single gate cycle, in this case of a running report. Once you've sort of digged into the data, you can add annotations or features, as we call them, to highlight things that are important for you or the client in the charts. So we're adding one here to the pelvis movement, and there's an option to add symbols if you want, but we don't need that. We'll save it, and it will appear in the list of features. Now you can mark features and create advice based on the features. And that advice will be visible to anyone you share the report with. And in some cases, it is useful to also include recommendations for exercises together with your advice, especially when you're working with sort of the athletes themselves. If you want to do that, you can search our exercise database and look for the exercise you want to recommend. And then that exercise will be linked within the report when you share it as well. And your client or customer or students using this will be able to get instruction and a video for the exercise. When you've in the process of generating reports, very often you might also want to compare to existing results. To do that, you just click Add Data, and then you can either search or just pick one. If the person is coming back, pick one of the previous reports, and then load more data into the report so that you can compare directly within the report. When you are done with all of that, you may want to export, and that's done by using the export function, where you can generate PDF files and then also print out the PDF file or send it manually. But in most cases, you probably want to share a secure link so that the person who's looking at the report has the same interactive features. To do that, we'll go back to the presentation, and I'll look at the report center. The report center is a second component of our cloud ecosystem. And this is where you can search and filter all the reports that you have uploaded. It's a place to share reports. There's some new features coming out for sharing reports within a few weeks, so stay tuned for that. But already today, you can create a secure link and make it available to the person you want to share the report with. You can create custom reference data sets. If you're working with different types of populations or different types of athletes, this is the place where you can select a subset of your reports and create a reference data set. And this reference data set will be displayed in the background of your reports if you like to. You can also customize the layout in this place. So if, say, you want to create a shorter version of a report, you can make a template where you remove some of the more advanced charts. And if you just do a quick assessment, you can then share this report using the layout with just a subset of the charts. And you can also import C3 files. All of this has been around for some years now, and it's based on pre-processed data. What that means is that the data is processed on the local computer, and then the biomechanical quantities are uploaded into our cloud system. That means that if we decide to add a parameter and you want to make that parameter visible in your report, you would have to go back to the raw data, find it on your computer, update the analysis module, and re-upload the data with a new parameter. That's one of the reasons why we worked on moving the biomechanical processing into the cloud as well. And that's what Calqulus will do. It's an online processing engine running on open source pipelines, and it takes in data that you have uploaded and then runs a pipeline to run the processing of the pipeline and generates the same report that you had before. The input data is QTM skeleton data. So it's not marker data, it's skeleton data generated with the QTM skeleton solver. And that data is uploaded to the cloud biomechanics engine. Then that engine runs a pipeline, which are public. So you can find those pipelines on GitHub. You know exactly how the data is being processed. And then when that is completed, it makes the data available on report.qualisys.com in your login, just the same way it was done before with the analysis modules. Okay, I think I talked enough. Let's move on and run a live demo so you can see the full workflow. I'll hand over to Raimund for that.
Thank you, Niels. All right. So now we'll take a look at the Calqulus module in QTM, where we will run a cycling analysis. So here comes Dylan, our participant today. And besides cycling sessions, you can also, in the Calqulus module, you can have other types of sessions. So the Calqulus module supports baseball, cricket, cycling, generic, and the running session. But let's try out the cycling session. So we have prepared a session here with a static bike trial and a static trial, and we will now record 2 dynamic trials. So let's get started. All right, let's start the capture. Thank you. And I will enter the load. And let's start the second one. Recording. Thank you. Let's just add the load on that one. 150. All right. So like Niels said, we need skeleton data. And in order to create the skeletons, we just click on this button here and we will solve skeletons. And we will go through our measurements and create the skeleton. So we can just double check that we got a skeleton here. Looking good. Let's check the second one as well. Great. All right, so to create the web report, you just click on this button here and you select cycling web report. And now all the video are exported and encoded for the web and uploaded to our cloud system. And we also upload the skeleton data. And once that's done, we will process it with Calqulus. So here is the report in a few seconds. And this report will be the same report that's created with our traditional cycling module. So it has the same parameters. It's working exactly the same. So this is like the standard procedure. But if you would like to know more about how Calqulus works and more about the pipelines, we will take a look at that now. So like Neil said, we need input data in the form of skeleton data, and we also have a YAML pipeline as the input. The YAML pipeline is a plain text file that contains definitions of events and parameters, which is basically a list of steps. And we will talk more about those in a bit. And then you get the report data. So our public GitHub repository has two repositories, the Calqulus pipelines and the Calqulus steps. The pipelines repository contains the pipelines, which describes the analysis. And the steps repository contains the code that powers all the steps and all the calculations. And in the steps repository, we also have the pipeline documentation that describes all the steps. It has examples. It has examples of YAML pipelines that you can use. And in the pipelines, you can see, in the pipelines repository, you can see all the files that define the different pipelines: the cricket, baseball, cycling, generic, and running. And now we'll take a look at an example where you can edit a pipeline to update a parameter. And in this case, we have a noisy parameter that we want to smooth the filter. So what we are doing is we're cloning our pipelines repository. We're making a fork of that. And then we edit just the generic pipeline, and we will add the filter. So let's take a look. So we go into the generic pipeline and we edit the file. We go to the parameter that we want to change. We add a step, a low pass step, and we add some options. We commit the changes. And then we go to the report center to make sure that we are using our fork and not the standard repository, and that we are using the correct pipeline. Now we can see the noisy signal here, and we can reprocess it by clicking this reprocess button. Now it will use the new updated pipeline. You can see the noisy one and the smooth one. Noisy one and the smooth one. All right, let's hand it over to Nils.
Great. Thank you very much, Raymond. Nice demo. So now you saw the Calqulus workflow, but an obvious question is, how does this compare between the current modules, the traditional modules, and the Calqulus workflow? So first, an overview again. What we just did is we recorded with the camera system through QTM. Data was handled with the project automation framework. And then we could have sent it to Visual 2D if we were using the traditional cycling module. And then from Visual 2D, it would go into the web report. In this case, we are running the Calqulus module, which means that the data went directly from QTM into the cloud where the processing was done. And then it was, again, creating the same web report as before. And because the data is in the cloud, the skeleton data, and the web report as well, they are connected. So if you change anything in the Calqulus pipeline, like Raymond just showed in the example, it is possible to see this in the web report. Of course, what he showed, the development workflow, is not something you would do on a daily basis. If you're just running it like a traditional module, you would just do the first steps and collect the data, click upload to web report, and you would get the same web report as before. So when we compare what sort of licenses and software you need, for the traditional modules, you need QTM, you need the analysis module. So it could be gait, running, cycling, baseball, functional assessment. And on top of that, Visual 3D for the biomechanical processing locally on your computer. And in the future, also web report subscription if you want to use online reports. I mean, it's not mandatory to use online reports, so you could also skip the web report subscription and simply create local Visual 3D reports only. But if you want to benefit from the features of the web platform, we're introducing a subscription for that, which we'll talk about more in a minute. Now, if you are running Calqulus, you still need QTM to record the data. Then you need the Calqulus module. It's a different processing module. It's free. There's no license for it. And it handles all the different types of sports, as you could see when Raymond showed it in the software. You also need a web report subscription, but you can get 10 reports for free. That means anyone can try this today and just create those reports. And if you run out of reports, you can delete old ones and keep going. So it makes it very, very easy for you to get started. In the table on the right-hand side, you can see in more detail which options we now offer for all the different movements. You can see, for example, cricket is only available in Calqulus, whereas running at the very bottom, as an example, if you want to go markerless, you would use Visual 3D and Thea. Or if you want to go marker-based, you can use Calqulus or Visual 3D. So that Visual 3D option still exists just as before. When we compare a little bit more in detail what features the two different approaches offer, for the traditional modules, the marker sets are quite diverse because different modules have different marker sets. They all support the sports marker set as well, but they are different options. So there are several marker sets. Calqulus requires the sports marker set because the skeleton solving is done in QTM. So one difference. Processing, of course, is done locally for the traditional modules, and it's done in the cloud for Calqulus. Kinematics are reported in both platforms. So as you just saw, we got the same cycling report out. For kinetics, though, they are only supported in the traditional modules as of today. So if you have force plates, you want to look into joint moments, you need to use one of the traditional modules for now. With Calqulus, that's not supported. The processing pipeline, how the data is processed, and also the actual software that performs the biomechanical processing is proprietary if you use the traditional modules. In Calqulus, the platform is open source. You saw the repositories, and everything that Raymond just showed is publicly available. So if you want to know, okay, how does Qualisys detect the events in cycling, you can just go into that repository, look for the step where we do the event detection, and then you can see exactly the definition that we use. The steps that are used within these pipelines are also open source, the source code for those. So if you want to know, oh, how has Qualisys implemented that filter that Raymond just showed, you can just go into that repository and look at those. It also means, as Raymond showed, advanced users, if they want to, can fork this repository, which means you make a copy of it. Within that copy, you can make modifications, and then you can point Calqulus to your copy so that the processing will be done based on your copy and your version of the pipeline. Finally, a difference that that is relevant in daily use of the module. In the traditional modules, we always had the approach, it's one module per activity. So there's one module for running, there's another one for cycling. If you have someone coming in to do a running and a cycling assessment, you have to set up that person twice because it's two completely different projects. In Calqulus, we decided to do this differently. So there's a single module where you can collect all types of data that you want to process. And then you just get different reports out. So that's, in daily work perspective, something that should make your life easier when running Calqulus. In terms of subscription options, how are we handling that? So we will be requiring web report subscriptions in the future. And this is no difference to like storing the pictures on your phone or other cloud services. We are storing the reports, and based on that, one factor that differs between the different plans is how many reports you can store. You can see on the right-hand side, you can store 10 reports for free. You can delete reports to free up storage. So an easy option to give it a try. And then you can see it scales up with the different levels of plans. You can also there's also a few additional features, but overall the plans are fairly similar, and it's mainly the storage that differs. If you are using the web reports today, yeah, you don't have to worry about this. We have a transition process over the next 6 months into this new model. So we'll get in touch with you, make sure that you have a smooth transition to the new models and the new plans. Okay, so now if you got curious and you want to know more about Calqulus, you will be able to get a recording of this webinar that you can watch yourself again, or you can share with others. We have short intro videos on YouTube. We have more advanced tutorials on Q Academy. They are available without login, so you can just search for Calqulus tutorials and you will find them on Q Academy. There's brochures that you can download on our website, and we've also updated our website to show the same information that you just saw in that table with all the different processing options. And we also have a demo project. So if you want to try Calqulus today, you don't even have to collect new data. You can just go to the Qualisys file library and download a demo project and run the processing there. Links to all of that will be shared in the follow-up email to this. And finally, as I mentioned earlier, you can download the Calqulus module without any license restrictions. You don't need to ask us for a trial license. You can just go to the Qualisys client login, sign in, and download the module, and then take the data from the demo project and create your first Calqulus report. Okay, with that, we are wrapping up the presentation. I'll ask Raymond to join again, and we'll take a look at any questions we might have. Okay, so what happens when I reach the limit of the number of reports for my subscription? Very relevant question. So what happens is we are blocking new uploads. So you keep full access to all reports that you already uploaded, and until you either increase the subscription or you delete some reports, you will not be able to upload new reports. You will see a warning in the report center before, and now if you scroll all the way down in the report center, you can also see how much of the quota you're currently using. Okay. Hopefully this answered your question. Otherwise, feel free to ask more. Another question, can I create my own pipeline? Yeah, very good question. So in theory, you can take our pipeline and make a lot of modifications so it becomes your own pipeline. But the one thing that is limited as of now is the report layout. So the report layouts are predefined. So the running report has certain charts. If you want to make a completely brand new parameter, there will be no chart to show that parameter. So some people have managed to just reuse other charts, but that's not a good solution because then it will have the wrong name. So in the long term, we will provide that possibility as well, that you can add your own parameter or do a pipeline from scratch and then add the charts for that. Maybe relevant to this in this context is that Calqulus includes a generic pipeline as well. Generic is a very basic pipeline, which simply takes the data that you have recorded and displays that data together with a skeleton and video in a web report. So let's say if you are an ergonomics user and Qualisys has no ergonomics report, you can now take this, use the skeleton marker set, the sports marker set, create a skeleton, upload the data to the web platform, and you will get a report out with video, skeleton, and all the joint angles. Okay. Another question that came in is, what version of QTM do you have to have for Calqulus? We launched Calqulus on 1st of June, and we have actually just launched and released a new QTM version 2 days ago. So I would highly recommend this version, 2023.2. I think it is possibly supported in 2023.1 as well, but I think to make it easy for you, I would go for the latest 2023.2. Another question is there documentation to show the syntax for various functions for pipelines, like function names for interpolation, filtering, and so on? Maybe, Raimund, you're the best to answer that.
Yes. So in the Calqulus steps repository on GitHub, you will find the pipeline documentation.
I think if you actually just Google Calqulus in GitHub, you'll find that.
Yeah. And if you really want to know what's going on, you can look at the source code.
Yeah, but there is full documentation as well, so that it's not just documented by the source code. Very good question. Okay, we'll wait a few more seconds to see if there are any more questions. As I said, you will get a follow-up email within the next days with links to all resources, to the recording of this webinar. So if you missed anything, you can watch it again, and it's an open link, so you can share that link also with your colleagues if you like. I cannot see any new questions, so it's time for us to wrap up. To thank my colleagues for setting everything up here, also the ones in the background, making sure we have a good experience today to show you the workflow. Thank you, but most importantly, thank you to you for joining the webinar today. Get in touch if you have any questions. Thank you and bye-bye.